Okay, today we're looking at Module 3, Lessons 3 and 4. It's just a continuation of yesterday's lesson. We'll be looking at positive and negative numbers and 0 on a number line, and opposite numbers all in real-world situations. So this is all going to look very familiar between last night's homework and yesterday's lesson. Has anybody ever gone hiking or mountain climbing? Has anybody ever gone scuba diving?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I've gone snorkeling once or twice. I've never gone scuba diving. I think that would give me a little claustrophobic. It might freak me out a little bit. But if you go hiking or scuba diving, those are examples of integers. In science, you're learning about altitude. How at higher level altitudes, the air is thinner, there's less oxygen modules in a certain space. So altitude is the distance away from a given point. Typically, when you go hiking or sailing or scuba diving, it's feet above or feet below sea level. Football fans, Mile High Stadium in Colorado, right? That's because it's a mile above sea level. And other teams have a hard time when they go to Colorado to play, and a lot of Olympic athletes will train in Colorado because there's less oxygen in the air. Their body has to work harder. So then when they go to compete somewhere else at a lower elevation, there's more oxygen, and the more oxygen that gets to your blood, the more efficient your blood and your muscles are. So people will train there, so it's harder. So then when they go somewhere else to compete, it's better. So a lot of athletes have a hard time going to Mile High Stadium in Colorado because of the high elevation and how high it is above sea level. So, I'm going to be a professional football player. What do I need to know math for? Well, here you go. Okay, it's part of our everyday life. So elevation in this situation is feet above sea level or feet below sea level. So look at example 1, which is on page 9 in your notes, the top right page, page 9. So how would we write an integer? Remember, when we're writing an integer, we don't label it with units or anything. So how would we label if the diver is 30 feet below sea level? Hi. How would I write that as an integer?
Negative 30.
Sure. Negative 30. What would we say the sailor is at? If we're comparing everything to sea level, and the sailor in that lovely sailboat is on sea level, what would we consider that? 0. And the hiker is at 2 miles above sea level. But since we wrote the diver in feet, let's also write the hiker in feet. So that would be a positive 10,560. We could have put a positive 2, but then if we wanted to compare who was further away from sea level, it would have been confusing, because the diver would have been 30 feet, but the hiker would have been 2 miles. So the 2 and the 30 would have been confusing to compare. So I kept them both in the same unit. So who's further away from sea level? The hiker, right? But we're going to get into distance much later on. All right, so for number 2, it's asking for an appropriate scale. So underline the words. So you didn't write the answers for number 1. Yeah, you were supposed to write those. Yes, for number 1, you were supposed to write the answers. Okay, so now that everybody copied the answers for number 1, let's all work together to work on number 2. So, using an appropriate scale. Well, wait, what? What does that mean? What do I got to do? Well, let's keep reading. To graph each of the following situations on the number line to the right. Notice this is a vertical number line. So this is representing above sea level and below sea level. So it's almost... So it's almost like here, if we were going to look at it. Okay, so here is our number line to represent sea level, and then above sea level, and below sea level. So the vertical number line is good to use in this situation. So also write an integer to represent both situations. So A hiker is 15 feet above sea level. How would I write that as an integer? Right. Positive 15, and if it's a positive, we don't need the sign. And a diver is 20 feet below sea level.
Negative 20.
Perfect. And because it's asking for integers, we're not labeling it. All right, so now I'm going to go put them on that number line. Yeah, what's missing? The number. So that's what it means by appropriate scale. I have to number my number line first. So I have to go from what to what on my number line? How big does my number line have to go? I have to go from positive 20 to negative 20. So I need both sides of 0. So I'm going to put 0 right in the middle. And remember, 0 represents, and if you want to label it, you can. 0 represents sea level. We don't always have to put 0 in the middle, kind of our number line. 0 can go at the top or the bottom, but because we know from looking at our answers, we need both sides. So you said to start at 20. Is this positive 20 or negative 20? Positive. So 20. What intervals, what scale do you want to use? Should I go by ones? That's a lot. Let's go by fives. And then negative 5, negative 10, negative 15, negative 20. We could have stopped at we could have stopped at positive 15. You don't have to have it even on both sides. It does not have to be even on both sides. We could go by tens and then cram the hiker in the middle, but we've got room, so we want to make it as big as we can so it's as detailed. But we didn't want to go by ones because then that would have been too big. All right, so 15 feet above sea level, that's our hiker. And then negative 20, that's our diver. So everybody should have labeled number 2, drawn and labeled the number line, written the integers, plotted the points with some nice round circles on the tick marks, and labeled everything.
Sleeping.
Okay, let's continue. Now, number 3 is similar to last night's homework that I think confused some of you. So for each statement, there are 2 statements, 2 related statements. So first, we're going to circle the statement that's correct. Then, we're going to fix the statement that's wrong. So let's look at the situation. A submarine, so here's the first situation, it's labeled A. A submarine is submerged 80 feet below sea level. Then they wrote it 2 different ways, I and I. Which is correct? Give me a thumbs up if you think I is correct. Give me a thumbs down if you think I is correct. Give me thumbs in the middle if you're not sure. So read your 2 choices, and then let's vote. Thumbs down if you think that one's correct. Thumbs up if you think I is correct. Thumbs in the middle if you're not sure. Okay. So, Maddie, how would I, first let me come up with the answer before I try to read these 2, because that might confuse me. How could I write 80 feet below sea level?
800.
800, whatever. How can I write that? Negative 800 is 800 feet below. So this one is saying it's negative 800 feet below sea level. This one is saying 800 feet below sea level is negative 800. So which one is correct? Good, perfect. So let's circle the second one. And now we have to go back and fix the first one. What's wrong with the first one?
Because it's kind of like saying 2 negatives.
Right, we can't have this and that. We can't have both. We have to pick one. Okay, so the depth of the submarine is negative 800 feet. And that's all you have to do. Fix it. I said circle it, not scribble it like it's a spirograph. You don't even know what that is. All right, Sophie, the elevation of a coral reef with respect to sea level is given as negative 250 feet. So which sentence correctly describes that? The coral reef is negative 250 feet. So here's the water, those are the waves. And that is negative 250. Or we could say it's 250 feet below. That or that, not both. So thumbs up if it's I, thumbs down if it's I, thumbs in the middle if you're going I have no idea. All right, I see some difference in opinion. 250 feet below sea level is correct. This had the negative and the below. We can't have both. So it's just simply negative 250 feet sea level. Okay, so make that correction. All right, now let's turn to lesson 4. Okay, let's review opposites again. What makes it an opposite number? We talked a little bit about opposites when we went over our homework. Kevin was out yesterday, so let's help him out. What makes an opposite? So if I gave you a number, how could I find its opposite?
It's the same distance away from 0.
Perfect definition, the same distance from 0. So for example 1, they gave you the number 8. How far is the number 8 from 0?
8.
Yeah.
Pretty obvious.
Yeah. But some people will be like, wait, what? It can't be that simple. Yes, it can. So now let's go 8 in the other direction. Let's see if I can draw this backwards. I can't. So that's also 8. It's not negative 8. It's still 8 units to negative 8. So the opposite is negative 8 because those are both 8 units or 8 ticks or 8 jumps or 8 hops or 8 spaces. I think you get the point. So if we look here, the opposite of positive 8 is?
Negative 8.
The opposite of negative 8 is?
Positive 8.
Get paid for this. Okay. Very quickly, let's do number 2. What's the opposite of 9?
Negative 9.
So we're going to plot negative 9 on the line. You're trying to rush, I'm combining words. That's not a bad idea. If you want to put a lowercase a above it, not a bad idea, Kevin. B, what's the opposite of negative 2?
Positive 2.
All right, so that's the answer for B. What's the opposite of positive 4?
Negative 4.
So let's plot it and label it. Opposite of negative 7? Positive 7. So let's label it. Yes.
When you're saying the positive,
Let's continue, please. I'm going to skip number 3 because I feel that we've done a lot of practice. If we have time, we'll come back to number 3 because I really want to focus on number 4. Well, I should say example 2. So let's take a look at example 2 on page 12. Shh, please stop the chatter. All right, we're not going to panic when we see all these words. We're going to read it and go one step at a time. 3, 2. So let's just I'm going to tell you a story, and you're going to make a little picture in your mind. Now, typically when I see big word problems, I don't comprehend them very well because I'm too worried about what are they going to ask? What do I have to do? So my brain is 2 feet ahead of my eyes. So back up your brain. How many people do that too? You can't comprehend it because they're, what do you ask me? What do you want? What do you want? What do you want? What do you want? Okay? Like, so Let's not do that to ourselves. Let's just cross that bridge when we get to it. Right now, let's read a little story.
Yeah.
Story time! So, Maria decides to take a walk along Central Avenue to purchase books at the bookstore. So, picture Maria walking down the road to find herself a nice book. On her way, she passes the Furry Friends pet shop and goes in to look for a new leash, right? So she was at the bookstore. She went to the pet store to look for a leash. The Furry Friends pet shop is 7 blocks west of the bookstore. All right, she was at the bookstore. She went 7 blocks west to go to the pet store. After she leaves the bookstore, she heads east for 7 blocks and stops at Ray's pet shop to see if she can find a new leash at a better price. Which location, if any, are the furthest from Maria while she was at the bookstore? Okay, so she was walking, she saw the pet store, she went to the bookstore, and then she went to the other pet store. So that's what she did. So it's asking us to determine an appropriate scale, which means number your number line. Okay, and a scale means to number your number line and model the situation. So what was her starting point of reference? She based everything on how far away it was from the bookstore. So if she started at the bookstore, that bookstore is going to be our 0. All right, so the bookstore is our 0 because she didn't say, all right, I started from home and walked 7 blocks. That's not what she said. Put that away, please. She didn't say she started at home. She's basing everything from the bookstore. So where is Furry Friends based on the bookstore? 7 blocks west. So west is going to go that way. So -1, -2, -3. I mean, really, can you walk -7 blocks?
No.
No, it's still 7 blocks. 7 blocks is 7 blocks. You can't have a negative distance. She still put in the work, still put one foot in front of the other, and walked 7 blocks. But because it's west of the bookstore, we're considering it negative on the number line. But you're still walking. It's still 7 blocks, right? It's still that distance from 0. Okay? If I do a 5K, if I run the course backwards or if I run the course forwards, I'm still running 5K. Okay? It's still the same distance. All right, so this, what did we say this was the Furry Friends? So now, the other bookstore was 7 blocks east. So that's Ray's pet shop. Gentlemen. So which location is furthest from the bookstore? Where should she go to buy her new leash? They're equal distance. If they're equal distance from 0, they are opposites. So she can go to whichever one is cheaper because it's the same distance. I would go to the one that's closest to Starbucks or Carvel. But whatever. That's I'm just saying. But if she's worried about walking or time-wise, it's the same distance. So that makes them opposites. Okay? So let's take a look at number 4. On a number line, locate and label a credit of $15 and a debit from the same amount. Gentlemen, you've been very distracting today. I don't know why you're talking so much. When I ask you to please make a better commitment to pay attention and not be distracting. So, a credit of $15. Would that be a positive or a negative? So that would be a positive 15. What would a debit of the same amount be? Negative 15. So I can start with 0. What scale should I use? Let's go with 5s. 5, 10, 15, -5, -10, -15. So this represents my debit. This represents my credit. What is 0? If the 15, the positive 15 is a credit, like a deposit, and the 15 is a debit, like a withdrawal or a charge, what would 0 represent?
The point of origin.
Yeah. Or just leaving your bank account alone, not changing it. So they also ask you, so 0 means no change in the account. Means you're not adding money, you're not taking money away, you're not being charged any charges, you're not making any withdrawals, you're not making any interest, your money's just sitting in that little pile. No changes. That's what 0 means.
It's usually doing like nothing to a bank account.
Right. Right. But we're not representing the changes. We're just looking at where it's at on the number line. Like we're just identifying. But that's exactly what opposites are. She didn't change how much money was in her account because they're both the same distance from 0. Those are opposites. A $15 credit and a $15 debit are opposites, which results in no change to her bank account. Exactly. She didn't do anything. On a number line, locate 20 degrees Celsius below 0. How would I write 20 degrees Celsius below 0? How would I write that as an integer? -20 degrees. Oops, integer, no labels. How would I write 20 degrees Celsius above 0? +20. So here's 0 on my number line. Why don't we use intervals of 10? So that represents below 0. This represents above 0. So what does the 0 represent? 0 what? Degrees Celsius. Like what's the unit? What are we looking at? 0 degrees Celsius. Number 6, a proton. Oh, you learned this in science, your atoms. Did you do that yet? All right, well, you will. A proton represents a positive charge. Write an integer. So write an integer to represent 5 protons. So if a proton is positive, how would we write that? How would we write that? So it's not asking for a number line. 5 protons equals +5, because it's a positive charge. An electron has a negative charge. So how would you write 3 electrons? -3. Didn't ask for a number line, it just asked for the integers. So your homework is problem set 4, which is on page 14. Since they are, you might want to do some of this obviously, but number 1, you have to explain its location to the number line. Tell you what, I'll do extra help tomorrow because then we'll have 2 more lessons under our belt. Okay, so extra help is tomorrow.